If you don't already know the Sustainable Aquaculture Innovation Centre, or SAIC for short, then please allow me to just give you a very swift overview before we start the webinar in earnest. We are part of the Scottish Government's Innovation Centres programme. We're an independent, objective, science-led organisation whose sector expertise is both deep and broad. And I think I'm not being immodest when I say that we are extremely well connected with aquaculture, both in the UK and beyond. We have over 240 consortium members, organisations and businesses right across the sector. And if your business is not already one of them, then I would encourage you to get in touch after the event, and we will tell you all about the benefits of free membership of the SAIC consortium. What we do, what we're here to do, is to foster collaboration between academics and professionals, focusing on 3 key areas of innovation: finfish health and welfare, unlocking additional capacity for the sector, and shellfish and other non-finfish species. So we are in constant dialogue with the aquaculture sector to keep abreast of what their key topics are where we can help with innovation work. And you can see 3 ways in which we can help your organization or business through R&D funding, through training programs, and through knowledge exchange. And I'll be very happy to talk to you about that after the event if you wish to find out more. The clue is in our name, really. It's about helping the sector have as big an impact on the economy and on local communities as possible, with as small an environmental footprint as possible. And that is why we're so pleased to be bringing you this webinar on responsible plastic management. And that leads me on then to leaving you in the very capable and safe hands of Dave Garforth, whose background is in aquaculture and sustainable seafood. So he has a very deep understanding again of the sector, and he's also one of the founders of the RPM program. So thank you so much, and over to you, Dave.
Many thanks, Benedicta. Well, welcome everybody. It's fantastic to see so many companies and people joining us this afternoon for this webinar. I think it really does signal how important you see this particular subject. So we've got a great lineup, some great content to share with you over the next 60 minutes. What I'm going to do first of all is play a little bit which introduces and really gets to the heart of the Responsible Plastic Management Programme.
RPM is a not-for-profit organisation with a unique offering for organisations wanting to demonstrate commitment to responsible plastic management. We are a membership and assurance programme dedicated to assisting responsible businesses to manage their use of plastics, improve their environmental impact, and gain recognised certification accolades that can be effectively communicated. We live in an incredible age, surrounded by the future, formed with the assistance of plastics. Every aspect of our lives, shaped by them, moulded by them, in every industry, in every walk of life. But few can ignore the problem of plastic misuse and mismanagement, and the cost to our planet. By engagement with the RPM programme, organisations can prove their commitment to a better world. RPM is delivering to engaged members the tools, the coaching, the information and expertise in alignment to governments, market and individuals' expectations. Society wants organisations to reduce plastic use and waste and increase plastic circularity. RPM can help organisations and industries working to play their part, to turn the tide on pollution and reduce plastic's impact on climate change. Join the RPM programme and let's have all plastic that society encounters, be responsibly managed plastic.
So welcome again, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Plastics in Aquaculture, a responsible plastic management approach. As that video just intimates, this is really about building a program around the challenges that plastic faces. I'm going to try and introduce a little bit of detail about the Responsible Plastic Management Program with my colleagues. We're going to look at some of the challenges of plastic use in aquaculture, look at some of the risks and some of the best practices to avoid plastic loss, and also why a responsible plastic management approach offers solutions, can offer value and offer benefits to business. Got a great lineup of speakers this afternoon. We're joined with Joe Bazic, who is the Associate Director of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, GGI. Joel himself has a background in seafood as well, 20 years in the Canadian fishing industry, working at one of Canada's largest harbours, Stevenson Harbour, before joining GGI to take forward their mission, and he's going to present some of the great work they're doing in developing an aquaculture best management framework for aquaculture gear and prevention of its loss. He's also going to be joined at the Q&A session by Tim Huntington, who's been engaged in a lot of this work, and some of you know Tim, I'm quite sure, from Poseidon. And then we've also been joined by Adrian Davis, who is one of the co-founders of the RPM program. Adrian's got some 23 years experience in waste management, in circularity, in resource management across many different sectors, and he's going to present some of the tools and services that the RPM program is developing to support businesses on their journey for continuous improvement in plastic. Now, I might just ask everybody, if you have questions, we're delighted to take them, but if you could maybe just put your questions in the chat box available. We also have Melissa Murray, who works with our program as a manager. She's going to try and address some of those comments and questions as they come up. And at the end, I'm hoping we might have 5 minutes also to take a few questions through that chat box and respond to them. Okay, as that video intimates, the philosophy of RPM is really built on plastic issues. Okay, it's really one of overuse. Plastics everywhere. I think we all recognize that. We have poor circularity, in other words, recycling of plastic. And we know it's impacting the climate because plastic's made from fossil fuel. And we know that it's causing pollution and it's impacting wildlife. It also has challenges in water security as well, in terms of it's entering drinking systems and on human health as well. So we've got some challenges with plastic across all sectors, not just in aquaculture, of course. So this conundrum, this plastic conundrum, is one of environmental and climate impact. As the video said, we're not doing a great job. Somewhere between 8 and 13 million tons of plastic are entering the oceans each year. So we've got some cleanup to do. There's an enormous problem there, and our track record isn't good. And it's interesting when you think about it. If you look back maybe 50 or 60 years, when plastic really became part of the Industrial Revolution as it was then, and a super wonderful product, absolutely. The way it was advertised was as this disposable throwaway product, which made our lives easier. We could just use plastic and throw it away without any consequence at all. But I guess how wrong we were, and things have changed enormously since that point in time. Now we realize, of course, we have to do something about this. Plastic's everywhere. It's everywhere for a good reason, because it is a fantastic product. It's got so many fantastic attributes, and here's just a few key attributes that plastic offers us. Without me having to go through in any of these in any detail, we'll all recognize this, but you think about things like the way that we've electrified the planet over the last 100 years perhaps, and imagine if we would have had to do that without the use of plastic. It's hard to imagine what else we would have used to be able to deliver such value to society and businesses. And that's just one example of many things. And of course, aquaculture is included in this, whether it's the virtues of plastic because it's waterproof, whether it's the virtue of plastics because it's inert. It's great as a packaging product, we all know that. It's also buoyant. So it's hard to imagine how we would manage aquaculture without this wonderful material. But as a result, about 350 to upwards of 400 million tons of plastic, most of it virgin plastic, direct from fossil fuels, are produced and used every year. So we've got a challenge here, and our global record isn't good. Only about 9 to 13% of plastics is recycled globally. Certainly in certain regions of the world, we do a better job than that. And here in the UK, certainly our track record is better, but the global average is poor. So we're still stuck in this make, use once, throw away mentality. And of course, we've got to change this. We've got to change our relationship with plastic. So the plastic problem is born of 2 or 3 things. One, it's a wonder product. 2, it's formed largely out of fossil fuel. That has an impact. And our management of plastic is poor. We tend to mismanage plastic quite a lot in society, and that equals impact. It threatens our planet, and it threatens the people in the planet. So what do we do? Well, clearly, and I think everybody will see this, governments, society, markets want action. They want action on plastic impact reduction. And we see this in many facets of society now. We see it from figureheads. It's no more than Sir David Attenborough giving a call of action to the world, really, to say we've got to stop this appalling mess that we've created on the planet, and particularly in the marine environment. We see legislation now. And I'm sure most of you are aware that there will be plastic packaging taxes brought in, for example. It gets kicked down the road a little bit, probably because of COVID, but it's now signaled for April 2022, whereby any plastic that doesn't have 30% recycled content will be taxable at one level or another. So in other words, incentives to try and improve our rates of recycling. And also if you look at things like procurement policies, both at government level and in markets, not only does and we all know about ESG, and we all know about sustainability agenda and a requirement to demonstrate that with commitment, but we're seeing more and more that plastic is included in that ESG and that sustainability agenda. Consumers, of course, consumer choices, and we're all aware of consumers, and of course we have to respond to this. Consumers want better options, not just in plastic, but in all aspects, of course, of environmental choices and friendlier choices, and that includes plastic too. Then, of course, media attention and environmental pressure groups are putting the spotlight on plastic across all industries. And, of course, investor choices as well, and now looking at a more greener approach to how they want to put their investments into businesses. So there is an argument that plastic is becoming public enemy number 1. And, of course, we need to stop this because plastic is so vital to this industry, to this business, as it is many, many others. So, the Responsible Plastic Management Program, a Business for Good initiative. So this program has been founded on the back of the plastic challenge, recognizing that we need to be more responsible with plastic. Its founders are from a number of different sectors, including the assurance sector, standards and certification, sectors with specific experience, such as in seafood, I guess myself included in that, sectors in circularity, in waste management, and so on and so forth. We've come together to create the Responsible Plastic Management Program as an initiative to support businesses on their journey towards a more positive relationship with plastic. So this program is about assurance and reassurance. Assurance within the business, within the stakeholders of the business, at board level and at stakeholder level, and also reassurance. It's about offering a system that allows tangible measurement through certification, for example, which gives real proof and evidence of those commitments within the supply chains and within markets and other interested parties. So what have we got? Well, the RPM program is founded around a standard, a unique, credible, it's an ISO-based type standard for responsible plastic management, and also a certification model, and we have approved certification bodies involved with us now. We've developed this logo, a kite mark, for organizations and brands to use, and we're developing and delivering tools, digital tools, improvement support services to allow businesses to engage with us and take that journey in responsible plastic management, have it measured, and at some point have it certified. The message we're sending out is one of delivering confidence and certainty. around responsible plastic management, a sustainable message, in other words, not a message that might be couched around plastic free or plastic avoidance, because we can't do that. We need plastic. It's important to this business. It's important to every business. And indeed, it's important to society. This is really about making sure that every plastic that's handled is responsibly managed. So the problem itself isn't plastic. It's really plastic mismanagement. And there's going to be more plastic in the world. Therefore, we need more plastic management. And I think we all recognize there is no silver bullet here. It will take several types of actions. It'll take action at global level to make this work. It'll take collaboration, both within sectors and across sectors. And it's important to make a point that every effort matters at all levels within a business to try and manage plastic better. So what can we do? Well, we can become more aware of the plastics we use, and okay, the alternatives to plastic too, if they fit. We can become more aware of the types of recycling initiatives which are available. We can discover how we're using plastic. We can become more informed of the different types of plastic we use, and we can use that to establish a baseline, set targets and controls to manage the plastic better within our business. And we can engage in the necessary parties in the plastic supply chain, the value chain, to support and facilitate that. And we can do it as a company, or we can do it as a group, or even better, we can do it as a sector. And I think the more we can bring sectors together, the better it is. So, plastics in aquaculture. This is a quick overview, and I'm going to hand to Joel, and he's going to say more words about plastic use in aquaculture as well in a couple of minutes. We all know it's a very important material. As I mentioned, it's impossible to think how we could manage aquaculture without plastic in terms of the installations we use. For example, plastics used in nets, it's used, of course, in floating collars, it's used in floats and buoys, all manner of things. In the processing environment, it's used. And in fact, in a processing environment, you probably find there's really only one or two types of materials used. One is stainless steel, because it's hygienic, and the other one is plastics of all types and shapes and descriptions, whether it's plastic cladding, whether it's acrylic paint, whether it's belts, vinyl in other words, or whether it's the PPE we're using. An enormous array and types of plastics are used, and again, it's quite challenging to think how we would manage without it. Packaging, of course, and expanded polystyrene packaging is, of course, vitally important to this industry. I'm going to say a few words about that in a second. And I guess we've got to think about this. Most of the world at this point in time is thinking about how to get plastics out of the marine environment and out of the aquatic environment. Well, here we've got an industry which deliberately puts plastic into the marine environment. So I guess to some extent, we've got to be even more careful about how we manage plastics in the environment and have more demonstration that we are managing that responsibly and we are avoiding, eliminating and reducing its impact by making sure we're not allowing it to become waste in the environment. Impacts, yeah, I think we can all recognize some of these impacts on marine life and mammals caused by large types of plastics, and of course plastics we use in the marine environment have to withstand energy in the marine environment from storms, etc. So they have to be engineered correctly. We know that plastics break down to things like microplastics and microfibers. We know already now, and it's proven in science, that they're entering the food chain. So these are real issues that we've got to somehow manage and deal with and communicate an effective message about what this industry is doing. I think we also have to recognize there's still poor practices in aquaculture. I'm not necessarily saying it's here in the UK, but in other parts of the world, you see examples of where plastic is poorly managed. Exposed EPS, for example, used on floats, where it breaks down quickly and it's lost in the environment. So plastics in the aquaculture sector. There's an enormous array of plastics which are used, and this is just a snapshot of the types of things that need to be done on a collective basis. An understanding of the polymers which are used in this industry and what they're used for, and an understanding about how much is used, what are those use life patterns like, and how do we go about managing that footprint and doing a better job. And one of the biggest challenges that faces most sector is that it's very difficult to get data. There are data sets, of course, and there are lots of efforts done at national and international levels in collecting data. But when it comes down to a sector-specific data, and particularly when you start and drill it down into the different types of polymers used, it becomes really challenging to collect the facts. And one of the issues we've got is without those facts, it's going to be really difficult to defend against challenges. And that means it's a risk to our reputation in aquaculture. I mentioned an example. I'm just using this as just one example of the types of polymers which you use, and it's incredibly important to this sector, expanded polystyrene and its conundrum. It has arguably quite a poor reputation for reasons which sometimes you have to sort of like think through. It's a great product. I think everybody understands that. It's tough, it's waterproof, it's got quite a favorable carbon footprint in actual fact. It is a recyclable plastic, it's lightweight, it's hygienic, and it's fairly cheap to use as well. Around about 22 million fish boxes are used every year in the UK industry. It's a 2018 figure, courtesy of the British Plastics Federation. They've got some great work done there, and we collaborate with them on all types of plastic. It's a great resource to have. So yeah, a little bit of a conundrum. So why the poor reputation? And you look at the stats, actually, you look at recycling of EPS. In the UK, EPS is recycled at around 70%. It's dropped a little bit, but it's still pretty good. Denmark's doing a fabulous job. 95% of EPS, this is in fish boxes, is recycled. And there's great initiatives in other countries, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, in Ireland too, where we're doing a great job at recycling EPS. But yet there's still this reputation issue. There's still this problem we have with EPS. So what is it? Well, it does cause a reputation impact, but you know, in some sense, you could say when EPS is lost in the environment, it breaks down very quickly, and of course it floats, and so it's very visible to public. So you can imagine if there is an incident around aquaculture installations, regardless of where that EPS came from, and of course, once it has broken down, it's impossible to trace. It's likely that aquaculture will be tarnished and will be blamed as much as anyone else in that particular location. The picture in the middle there is just showing you another example of impacts from EPS, and this is from the 2018 Holyhead port breakup when we had that storm. Again, a lot of EPS was lost into the environment, a lot of impact there. So it's not just this industry, of course, EPS is used everywhere, but the fact remains the same. We need to protect reputation, and to do that, we need to have a demonstrable way to prove that we're doing the right thing. And as I mentioned, to differentiate ourselves from those ones which might be in more of a poorer practice attitude, if you wish. Some resources. I mentioned British Plastics Federation there. They've got an EPS group. They've set up an EPS fish boxes website. It's been around for quite some time, actually. They would encourage people here to take a look at what they're doing. It's a good resource to have. I mentioned all the great work around EPS, which is happening already. This is compacting and collection. For example, Waste Matters, that's in Ireland, doing a great job. And also, that's compacting EPS for making recyclates, which tend to go into industries such as construction. It gets made into pipes and things like this, polystyrene, which is good. It's just fantastic. But it's not considered full, complete circularity. But yet there are projects now, and some of you may be aware or even taking part in the EPS SURE project and the EU Life Funder project, which has actually proven through chemical recycling that EPS can be broken down and form back into polymers to make polystyrene used, for example, back in the food industry. So directly back into food industry, in this case, is yogurt pots, is polystyrene. So there's great work being done in this sector, and we need to collect more of this information, and we need to use it to our advantage in the industry to demonstrate what's being done, as well as doing more, of course. So what could be done? Well, we could establish the baseline facts and establish the significance. This is just a conceptual diagram. It's we see things like this coming in other sectors, such as construction, where they're starting to consider all the different types of polymers being used, looking at the different areas of the business, and start to assemble the footprint on a collective basis. And we're encouraging the aquaculture industry to start getting involved in these similar initiatives. So, just to close this presentation then for you before I hand over to Joel, two things really. Technical actions at many levels are happening and more needs to be done. And also we need something like an assurance program. We need some way to demonstrate independently and in a robust way that businesses across all sectors are doing the right thing. And the message isn't this plastic-free message. The message is a responsible plastic management approach to the use of plastic. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Next, I'm going to hand over to Joel and invite him to take the floor. And if I can stop sharing, I will. And as I mentioned, he's going to be ably supported in the Q&A session by Tim.
I apologize in advance. I will go through fairly quickly because I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. But I did want to go through this presentation. Mostly this will be about what the GGI is about, a very quick introduction, and then into a couple of our knowledge products. One in particular, our brand new launched Aquaculture Best Practice Framework, which I'll get into in the meat of this presentation. So first of all, what is the Global Ghost Gear Initiative? We're housed under Ocean Conservancy. The GGI is the only cross-sectoral alliance committed to driving solutions to the problem of lost and abandoned fishing gear worldwide. Primarily, we were concerned with wild capture fisheries. Obviously, that has changed given the growth in the aquaculture sector and the reality that aquaculture is, a huge source of aquatic protein for people around the world. So we needed to ensure that we were addressing that as well, hence the Aquaculture Best Practice Framework that I'll get into in a moment. So the aims are to improve the health of aquatic ecosystems, to protect aquatic life from harm, and to safeguard human health and livelihoods. Each one of those is equally important to the others. We want to prevent gear loss, and this can take many forms. So policy change at the local, regional, national, international levels, end-of-life recovery programs for gear, whether that's from wild capture or aquaculture or both, promoting best practices throughout the supply chain, etc. Mitigating the impact of gear. We know that some gear, regardless of the industry, will get lost through normal practices, whether it's extreme weather or what have you. So trying to sort of redesign where we can in ways that still make sense for the industry to disable gear from ghost fishing if it is lost, and then remediating aquatic environments by removing gear that's already lost. So focusing on critically sensitive habitats. So that's really what the GGI is all about, but doing this with a membership model on a global scale. So I mentioned a global reach, 125 member organizations from across 6 continents, 18 supporting governments, and 4 high-level global affiliates. We really are a global program expanding all the time. A quick snapshot of some of our members, some of which you will recognize. Some of these folks might even be on the line today. I actually don't know who is on the line. I don't have a list, but some of you may find your logo art actually on that screen. We really do try to take a holistic approach. So from very small NGOs all the way up to massive global corporates, academia, governments, seafood industry, retailers, everyone in between, everyone that has something to contribute to this challenge, we want to engage with. And when we're talking about industry engagement, Dave mentioned I spent 20 years in Canada's commercial fishing industry before taking on this role. This isn't anti-industry at all. This is about trying to understand the chief challenges that the industry, both in wild capture and in aquaculture, are facing, and then trying to provide tools, pardon me, which is really what the best practice framework is a tool that the industry can use in order to reduce their plastic footprint and improve operations. So we want to raise awareness about the issue, but we also want to learn from the industry about the causes of debris loss. It's critically important to do that. Develop solutions to minimize it, as I mentioned, work with industry to provide appropriate disposal options for gear and debris, whether that's recycling at the end of its life, just making sure that it doesn't end up in the aquatic environment, and ensuring that these solutions are viable, they're lasting, that they make sense for the industry. All those things are critical, and that's why we have so many industry partners. So I mentioned our best practice framework. So we have one for wild capture fisheries, you'll see on the left, which we refer to our capture best practice framework, or CBPF. And then the one we'll be talking about today is the aquaculture BPF, the ABPF. They are comprehensive guidance documents. They reference all actors in the seafood supply chain for both wild capture and aquaculture. The guidance is covered across prevention, mitigation, recovery strategies, as we mentioned earlier, and it's designed to be incorporated into existing sourcing policies, CSR documents, fisheries management plans, seafood certification programs such as ASC, MSC, depending on which of the frameworks you're talking about, voluntary guidelines, workshops, those kinds of things. So it really is supposed to be a globally applicable comprehensive guidance document. So the best practice framework for the management of aquaculture gear, its overall purpose is to provide clear guidance on a range of relevant stakeholders, including seafood businesses, aquaculture industry, certification bodies, local government authorities on how to effectively address the issue of aquaculture-derived plastics in the marine environment. that's a very succinct way to put it. It's not just about gear loss, although that is a major part of it. Things like predator nets and those types of things, as they can become lost in extreme weather events, etc. It's really about plastic management from the aquaculture sector more broadly. It is worldwide in scope. Includes marine, transitional, and freshwater, so it tries to cover everything. Same thing with production systems, covers all aquaculture systems, the focus on open water cage, coastal inland pond systems, and grow out stages, just because of the increased risk that we'll get into in a minute. Talking about plastic waste debris, again, prioritized by the best practice framework, and it covers both, we should mention debris, which is like broken parts, containment, nets, that sort of aquaculture infrastructure, those larger pieces, and also what's termed litter or lost discarded materials, things like, plastics from, gloves, zip ties, those types of things that are just produced normally during normal aquaculture operations. And so the aquaculture, it goes through a background and purpose, an overview of the aquaculture systems, their relative contributions to aquatic debris, the potential management options to reduce this plastic litter and debris from aquaculture, basic principles for using the guide, and then the guide itself. So it is quite a comprehensive document. As far as the aquaculture systems that are covered, we cover open water pens, so things with plastic, metal, floating wooden collars, suspended netting closures, those types of things. On and off bottom, so trestles, poles, shellfish culture, mesh bag containment, those types of things. Suspended ropes and long lines. Coastal and inland ponds, so open water ponds fed by pumped seawater or abstracted river water. Tanks and RIS systems and other systems, so which can include a variety of systems, including bottom culture, lagoons, intertidal racks, those types of things. So we do try to cover all of those systems. As I said, the focus mainly is on the open water pieces, simply because of the increased risk due to their location, and also due to the storm activity that can cause catastrophic failures in some cases, depending on siting and all the rest of it. And as we know, we've seen climate change's effects on the planet this year in particular, and those storm surges and those storm events are becoming ever more frequent. When we're talking about the types and the pathways of debris from aquaculture, we talk about, again, large debris, sections of aquaculture equipment. We're talking cage collars, rafts, boats, tanks, piping, buoys, nets, ropes, those types of things, as well as smaller pieces of litter that might end up in the aquatic environment, things as feed sacks, discarded gloves, clothing, food and drink containers, plastic bags, those kinds of things, feeding trays. And then we're also talking about a braided material. So wear and tear on equipment, as Dave mentioned earlier, there's microplastics that result from this, microfibers. So this is primarily from ropes, EPS, particularly if it's not covered, ultraviolet light damaged plastics, those types of things. And the main reasons that this can happen could be from extreme weather, obviously. Could be from inadequate planning and management. Obviously, this will vary depending on the region. So that could be things like poor site waste management, poor siting, installation, maintenance, inadequate recycling, farm decommissioning if it's not done properly, lack of awareness and training, those types of things. And then in other cases, it can be deliberate discharge if it's simply easier to do that. And again, this is not necessarily to paint the aquaculture industry with a specific brush, only to illustrate a reality that in certain areas of the world, some of these, they might not follow these best practices when it comes to these types of prevention mitigation procedures. And that's really what we're developing this framework for, is so that everyone can have access to some of these pieces that are really probably quite easy to do. And I would imagine most of the folks on the line today are already including in their operations. So it's not about drastically changing the way the aquaculture business model works. It's about here are some, well, there's some big things, but also just simple things, site maintenance, checklists, plastic in and out, tracking what that's going on, data collection, as Dave talked about earlier. So a lot of these things they're not large industry changing type of things. They're really about making those small changes at those levels that you can really, those things start to add up. So there's also a causal risk analysis. So I've included it here. I don't expect everyone to read all this right now. I know it's very small text, but just so you can see what it looks like. It goes through what the various aquaculture systems are rated in terms of relative risk to one another. So the highest overall risk in terms of likelihood and frequency of debris and litter is with open water cages and pens, suspended ropes and cages. Again, not surprising given that they're the most exposed systems to extreme weather and dynamic sea conditions. They also tend to be complex multi-user environments. So waste collection management might be particularly challenging on the open water. That's not to say, again, I should note that this is relative to one another. This, as with the wild capture best practice framework, this is a relative risk analysis table. It's not meant to give an overarching opinion on the overall sustainability of each system. It's meant to be a relative risk analysis of the likelihood and frequency of debris and litter to originate from these systems relative to one another. So when you see high, it's not necessarily saying that this is, our opinion, this is a terrible way of doing things. It's just that given the other systems, there is an increased risk with those systems relative to one another. And it's not that it can't be managed. That's what the best practice framework is for, but just that's what this risk analysis is really all about. And I think we should really stress that. It's not an observation of the overall sustainability of aquaculture or the systems that are in place within it. Talking about the stakeholders that are addressed in the best practice framework, we have equipment designers, manufacturers, distributors, installers. So some of the things that might be a best practices there would be embedded traceability, research and use of biodegradable materials where possible, incentives to return redundant used equipment, those kinds of things. Aquaculture operators, so individuals and organizations actually managing aquaculture sites, risk assessments for losing gear, ensuring moorings and other critical infrastructure maintained can withstand extreme weather when it's likely to occur, training staff, standard operating procedures for high risk environments, these types of things. Aquaculture producer associations, creating codes of practice specific to that particular aquaculture method, region, species, whatever it is, spatio-temporal agreements with other marine space users, these types of things. Again, I'm not going into a great deal of detail because I'm trying to rush through the last little bit to ensure everyone has a chance to speak, but just to give an idea of what some of the high level best practice framework protocols would be for each of these stakeholder groups that are addressed in the ABPF would be. There's of course much more detail and granular detail within the framework itself. Harbor and port operators, so anyone that's at a harbor or port that's actually supporting the aquaculture industry in one way or another. So maybe access to low cost gear disposal facilities, recycling initiatives, better awareness and training that would be applicable across the board. Aquaculture sector managers and regulators. So again, spatio-temporal restrictions in high-risk areas, so you don't have organizations or operations tripping over one another, potentially causing gear conflict, development of appropriate farm marking identification regulations, impact assessments, those types of things. Fisheries environment protection and management agencies, or waste management agencies rather, establishing registry and database of lost and abandoned aquaculture facilities. The GGI itself has the largest global data portal in the world on lost and abandoned fishing gear. We will be adding aquaculture gear to that as well, so we can again start to gather some of that data that Dave had mentioned in a voluntary and anonymous way, if that's the way that industry wants to do that. And then when it comes to other stakeholders, aquaculture marine environment researchers, talking about the design of systems to minimize catastrophic loss if there is a major weather event. I won't go through the other ones here. You can read them here. Seafood eco-label and certification programs such as ASC. Seafood companies in the aquaculture value chain, right from processors through to retailers. NGOs, of course, other rights holders and stakeholders potentially impacted by aquaculture. Any type of statutory management bodies that set policy plans, regulations for aquaculture activities, and then of course environmental protection, waste management agencies, all sort of the categories that are addressed throughout this best practice framework document. I'm going to leave it there. I apologize for the fast pace of that presentation. I'm happy to take questions. If we don't have time for questions at the end of this session, that's fine. Anybody, there's my contact information. I'm happy to speak to any and all of you. And if there's interest in doing a more focused presentation on this for some other industry members, we're of course completely open to that. But I will end the presentation there and stop sharing. If anybody has any questions, again, happy to take them later on. Thanks very much again.
So hi everyone, I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm very pleased with the number of people here attending today. So thanks very much for giving us your time. Thanks also to the SAIC for allowing us to present as well. So I'm going to just pop the bonnet, if you like, and take you through the program, what the key components of it are, and then talk a bit about the benefits, the sort of wider benefits, as well as the kind of support and membership that we provide as part of the RPM program. So a bit about me. So I'm Adrian Davis. I'm a co-founder, as Dave says, and so I have 23 years experience overall in terms of environmental management, sustainability management systems. I'm a chartered environmentalist member, full member of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, currently preparing my fellowship application at the minute as we speak. Worked in various public, private sector organisations, higher education, local government, public service, power generation, manufacturing, processing. So multi-sector experience, which I think is quite key in this type of role, in this type of program. Specialisms are sort of management systems on the environmental side of things, so energy, environmental, carbon management, sort of footprinting, science-based targets initiative, that kind of thing, circularity, resource efficiency, and waste management. So the RPM program, in terms of overview, so there's 5 sort of main components of it, if you like, or sections. Those of you who are familiar with environmental management systems in 14001 will see some familiar terminologies there, and that has been specifically been the case. We've developed the program so that, and the standard itself, so that it complements 14001. So as a consequence of that, we hope and we feel that it should be a bit easier to implement this program within existing 14001 certified organisations, in terms of using like existing environmental aspects register, improvement programs, that kind of thing. So 5 sort of stages there. You can see sort of obviously first is the commitment side of things, is the plastic policy statement, the commitment from senior management. Then you have the sort of plastic register. So fundamentally, when I'm sure everyone will know that when you're developing a management system, the first thing you have to do is do a fairly thorough baseline review of where you are and where you want to go. So the plastic register is identifying all your sort of plastic related aspects and all your key management information. So effectively doing a mass balance of your inputs and outputs process approach. From that, then there's the evaluation of those aspects for significance, obviously to prioritize where you want to go and what you want to focus in on. So the development of the subsequent action plan then. And then obviously from that, it's records, making sure you're keeping an eye on how you're getting on with those programs, objectives and targets, and your commitment and your compliance side of things. And with any plan, do check that management system. It's all about continuous improvement in your performance. So that is still very much the case here in our program and standard. So in terms of the journey, the client tools and the client journey, so depending on where our members come in, those with very little understanding and not much work really done in the plastics side of things, we very much focus on our support on the awareness side of things, sort of training and coaching and bringing our members along. We also have the plastic management side of things, so that's the implementation of the responsible plastic management system. So we have tools available to engage members and other members. For example, we have an indexer tool, which is your aspects register, which you can populate. So to say, that's for engaged members. We also have templates for different types of plastic policy statements, that kind of thing. And then we have system certification as well, and then all the governance that is in and around that. So we support an improver to certification pathway. So you can see there towards the left, you have your improver pathway side of things for members, engaged members predominantly, where those sort of early in the process would be sort of towards the sort of the red side of things, obviously, where we help them along with training, etc., as I've just said. Those coming in with, say, a bit more mature sort of initiatives and awareness of what they have and what they need to do. Goes a bit further along, but ultimately we would like our members to go for the independent certification. Don't have to go for the independent certification, but obviously for best practice and independent verification, that's an option available. In terms of the accolades for membership, which we currently provide, we have the supporter one there on the left, and that's basically just a financial contribution, just so that we can run the company and run the activities to support the responsible plastic management program. We have engaged members, which is our engaged membership, which is our most popular membership at the minute, and that is just coming on board and making a commitment to implementing responsible business practices within respective organizations. We also provide training, so we have the basic awareness training right up to what we call plastic literacy training. So people will be probably aware of carbon literacy training. So we just have the plastic literacy training, which is a one-day course, which basically gives you a fairly decent overview of responsible plastic management, types of plastics, etc. And then obviously we have the certification side of things. So we currently have Control Union and Lloyd's Register as our two independent certification bodies. So they have been onboarded with us now, and they deliver the certification side of things. So we provide support for our members along the way, helping them with the implementation of the management systems in line with the standard requirements. Sorry. So back to the original slide there on the 5 stages with stages 2 and 3 there highlighted. So I'm gonna go into a bit more detail about this in terms of the baseline review and improvement programming, improvement planning. So plastic register, the baseline review, as I've mentioned. So the graphic there, obviously you can't improve what you don't measure, which I'm sure we all know about. So this is a key step in closing the information gap. So Joel and Dave talked earlier about making sure we can have some of these metrics within sectors in terms of what plastics are actually out there and their impacts and what we need to do to improve the sort of performance in those aspects and impact areas. So as I said, with a template register available, which we call our indexer, and that's available for engaged members. And it also provides a dashboard of key information produced from that register. So key steps, as I've said, key steps include identification of the organization's plastic aspects and associated information. So volumes used, polymer type, how the waste is handled, what sort of chain of custody checks are done on that waste. So again, fundamentally, the RPM program is about preventing misuse and mismanagement and escape to the environment. So we want to encourage a bit better chain of custody at the end, not just looking at your tier 1 waste contractors and going a bit further down the chain there where you can. Collection of all identified information in the plastics register. So as I say, template register is available. So plastic aspects is defined as being plastic objects and components in your premises and associated with business operations. So packaging, transportation, sort of equipment, gear, that kind of thing could potentially become an environmental hazard. The identification process itself. So we recommend a process-based approach where you've got your inputs, process, and outputs. Some high-level examples of what you might be looking at, sort of packaging around supplies, defective and obsolete parts to equipment, PPE, hygiene, clothing, that kind of thing. Output-wise, you're looking at obviously packaging of your product, and then obviously all the subsequent waste streams from your operations. So in terms of the indexer, then members add their plastic aspects and associated information across numerous key responsible plastic management related fields. Dashboards produce a summary. A dashboard is then produced, summarizing the key plastic metrics coming out of the data that you input into the front end. The indexer tool available, as I say, to the engaged members. Staged approach to completion. So at stage 1, we call first discovery. So you're putting sort of basic data in there in terms of about location, area, description, amounts. So we're getting a bit of feedback saying that this is good for multi-site organizations, so you can actually interrogate per site or all up or rolled up. Polymer identification then is polymer type, whether it's just single-use plastic or problem plastic, that kind of information. Stage 3 then is your source type, is it thermoplastic or is it thermoset, percentage virgin, recycled content, that kind of thing. Stage 4 then is alternatives and waste arrangements. So is there alternative products available? Is there recycled content plastic products available that you can maybe replace virgin with? Waste segregation arrangements, waste management arrangements generally. So can you improve waste segregation to maximize the recovery of high value and other plastics? And as I mentioned earlier, the chain of custody, just to make sure you're doing thorough checks of where your waste plastics are going and where they're ending up. So the dashboard then produced with key high-level data taken from the populated register, and this can be used to inform the selection of significance evaluation criteria. So this is currently Excel-based. We're currently working with one of our providers who also happen to be a member of the program on developing an app which will obviously present itself an awful lot better than just the Excel. But the Excel is very, very thorough and very detailed. So hopefully you can see there that there is a good lot of information goes in there. And so this is just showing you stage 1 in terms of sort of location, etc., and what the material is, description of the item, and then sort of number of units, weights, that kind of thing. So as I say, all this gets populated, and then out of that then comes your sort of dashboard information. So a few sort of examples of what's coming out. So this one is location by weight. So you can see on the right hand side there, you can see sort of bar graph, which gives you very quickly, you can see an image of where your high sort of volume or high weights are in terms of your plastic aspects. They also have the table in the middle there, which gives you your all up sort of kilograms, your weights, depending on what the item is. And then on the left hand side there, you can also interrogate it per country, per location or site, and discovery stage as well. Another example there is process stage by weight. So you can basically look and see where your weights of plastics are being generated. So you can maybe focus in on certain areas with, for example, if you're seeing a lot of weight or a lot of plastics being used in that particular area. Last one then, as an example, is just your plastic waste by final destination. So to say that the data input asks about where this sort of particular waste stream is being, how it's being handled. So is it going directly for recycling, so you've got effective source segregation in place, or is it being taken off site for processing by materials recovery facilities, or is it just going straight to landfill? Ultimately, we want a bit more presentable dashboard, which will come from our app once our app is developed. So we'll be looking for the one at the bottom there is one that Dave shared with us earlier on, sort of bubble graphs and bubble charts, and then just pie charts, etc. as well. So typical metrics: plastic weight, plastic type, weight by area, weight by plastic form, number of units by polymer, virgin recycled biodegradable, SUP or problem, plastics, waste destination. So on then to significance evaluation. So anybody that operates environmental management systems will know of the need to evaluate your aspects for significance. And as I say, we have developed this program and standard with that in mind. Review the plastic aspects registered then in your dashboard, giving you your sort of high level information to determine important metrics which you want to use to evaluate the significance of your plastics and plastic aspects. So some criteria you could use if they're single use or problem plastics: volumes, tonnage of plastics used. Do you want to improve the accuracy of data? So if you've got a lot of estimates in there as opposed to actuals, is there closing further the information gap? For example, if you're not sure of what the polymer is, maybe you need to do a bit more research on that to find out what that is. And then finally on waste controls and documentation as well. So can you improve waste collection arrangements? Can you improve source segregation, that kind of thing? You can also use business criteria, for example, reputational, public image impact, cost of changing that impact or aspect, or the legal exposure side of things as well. So we are not in any way prescriptive of how you do this significance evaluation. It really is up to the organisation and what's the best fit for the organisation and the member. So the evaluation then is complete based on that set criteria that you come up with, and the only thing that we recommend is that you use it consistently across all the aspects then. So the key aim, obviously, of the evaluation is to identify prioritized plastic aspects, for example, your significant plastic aspects for action planning. So that allows you to focus your efforts to ensure maximum benefit impact of any work you do in that space. Action planning then is in and around sort of several key themes. You've got use less plastic, so use less plastic, use less virgin plastic, probably that should say. So can you move to recycled content plastic materials? Can you recycle more? Can you improve your internal segregation, your waste collection arrangements? And can you support system-wide improvements? So can you, at the front end from a procurement perspective, look at how you specify your products? Can you specify recycled content products, that kind of thing? Can you get suppliers to reduce the amount of packaging around supplies coming into your organizations? That kind of thing. So action should be developed which relate to the identified significant plastic aspects. So again, very much in line with what you're asked for in 14,001. So the sort of things which I've kind of touched on before is improving your accuracy of your data, reducing and removing SUP problem plastics, replacing virgin plastics with recycled content alternatives, improving source segregation of waste streams to maximize recycling, and supplier dialogue. Objectives and targets should then be set based on these actions, including steps to achieve the methodologies and responsible staff members for each of those elements. So that's a whistle-stop tour, if you like, of the program itself and the sort of key elements within it. I'll focus then there obviously on the aspects, identification, significance evaluation side of things, because as most of you I'm sure will be aware that if you're going to implement any system or any improvement program, it's fundamental that you spend the right amount of time, you know, getting it prepped and getting the right sort of management information there to allow you to make informed decisions. So the benefits then, so the value proposition and product benefits of the program. Obviously, you've got reassurance on the plastic management side of things. So if you're engaged, then you're implementing responsible plastic management principles. Standard and improvement tools. So we have obviously the standard, as I've talked about, and the improvement tools. So you have your plastics index or that kind of thing as well. and collaborative frameworks for groups and results. So again, Dave touched earlier on some, can you do it per sector, can you do it per group? So we are looking to promote plastics in sector groups. So plastic in aquaculture group would be great. We're looking at plastics in groups for construction, education, manufacturing. So as Dave said earlier, sort of collective work just gives you better results really on the whole. And then finally, you've got measurement records and certification. So making sure you're keeping an eye on your action planning, recording weights, recording the benefits from your objectives and your improvement programs. And obviously the independent certification as well by Lloyd's and Control Union, who are two onboarded bodies at the minute. So just a quick background on the program and who's involved at the minute. So we've got 15 different sectors currently involved in terms of our members. So it's basically what we're saying there is that the program is applicable to all and any cross sector. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, the program can be implemented within organizations regardless of sector. This is just a bit of some of the logos of the people involved and some of our members and engaged members. So obviously with some of the aquaculture related there, and you can just basically see the spread there of all the different types of organizations in the sector that is involved. So support services that we provide program coaching, so we can take our members through the program if it's what they need. We can help them with information gathering, research. So some of our members are asking for support on sort of identifying different types of packaging, for example, particularly those sort of more problematic for food sector type organizations, where they're wanting to move away from like virgin plastic, where you've got your hygiene and safety concerns. We have a network of associates who are specialists in the plastics side of things. We can help with completing the baseline reviews, identifying aspects, and generally help with implementing the management system itself. Sector plastic groups we talked about, we facilitate those as well. Plastic literacy training, which I've talked about. And then also one of the other things that we do is we help member organizations with their understanding of how plastics and responsible plastic management integrates into sustainability strategies. For example, how implementing responsible plastic management initiatives can complement the wider or higher level zero carbon science-based target initiatives, predominantly around your scope 3 emissions side of things. And then we also can help our members doing pre-certification assessments, effectively doing sort of gap reviews to make sure they're ready for the independent certification process. So suggestions from our side for today, what we would love to see, some or indeed all organizations here today would be absolutely fantastic. So come on board as an engaged member of our program. So the membership also includes one coaching day with one of our specialists, and the type of support we can provide to you is we can help you with any work you've completed to date. So we can do a sense check on what you've done in terms of how that aligns with responsible plastic management principles. We can help develop the plastic policies, and as I said, we've got templates available there too to help. We can help start with the plastics baseline review, so a bit of coaching there around how that's done, and then the organisation and member themselves can then take that forward if it's something they want to do themselves. You can use the engaged logo then, so there's a bit of complimenting of good work underway in other areas potentially, and you have the positive reputational benefit there obviously. In terms of support, sort of specific support, so in terms of the sort of specific projects underway, we can help with that. So we can help with implementing the management system as a framework to oversee any project or process, help with baseline review completions, as I've said, and we can help with researching and sourcing realistic alternatives to existing plastics in use. So that is it from me. Thank you very much for listening. I will hand you over to Dave then, and say I'm happy to take any questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and thanks everyone. I appreciate we're very tight on time. We're just running over, so I'll just quickly share. And really, I'm going to close the session in terms of the end of the presentation. So if there is an opportunity for someone who wants to ask a question, we can take it. So we hope that we've raised awareness about plastic and the RPM program. And we hope you've found this session insightful and interesting. We encourage you to come to us and ask more questions, seek more information. And as Adrian said, we'd be delighted to see you join us. And again, on behalf of Joel, I'm sure he would be delighted to answer any further questions and interest in the work of Triple GI's program via the contact details he's left there. We're going to share the slide presentation via SAIC as well. And I'd just like to also say many thanks to SAIC for hosting this session. And if there is anyone who has a question, I know Melissa's been looking at the chat box, please feel free to ask now. And while Melissa's doing that, perhaps I can just maybe, in closing for a couple of minutes, I may have just maybe ask Joel one quick question. And Joel, I might ask you if you can give us a quick snapshot, maybe 30 seconds, of what's next with the Aquaculture Best Management Framework that Triple GI have developed.
Yeah, sure. Happy to touch on that very quickly. I think that one thing I neglected to mention during the presentation is that the best practice framework was developed like the wild capture version with industry consultation in mind. There was a lot of industry consultation that went into producing that document so that it's, again, going to be fit for purpose. As this is the first time we've done this with aquaculture, this is very much the first iteration of it. So we're very interested to hear more industry feedback on it. If people would like to have a look at it, let us know what you think would work and didn't work. We just very recently updated our wild capture best practice framework with more case studies, more research, updated the risk assessment framework based on some feedback. So we are very open to that, and we would love to have that feedback. And as far as the next steps go, I mentioned that we might have some tools for Triple GI members in particular about how to implement the best practice framework. There will be a sort of an online training course that we're developing at the moment. We have one already for wild capture, and we're developing the aquaculture one. But again, this is very much sort of the beginning of this journey. And if anyone has any feedback, we would very much welcome it. Thanks again, Dave.
Thanks very much, Joel. That's fantastic. It's fantastic to hear that. And maybe one, unless there's a question, I'm waiting for Melissa, she can chip in. There was something that came in earlier, and that was about the other sectors that we're working with. And maybe, Adrian, you might just, again, for 30 seconds, just give us a quick example of one of the other sectors that are engaged with us and the type of activities that we're taking forward with them.
Yeah, sure, Dave. I mean, probably the best one to give you which kind of live at the minute is within the port sector. The port sector, we're working with Belfast Harbour Commissioners, and so they've asked us to support them on a plastic scoping exercise as well as a waste management review. So because both of them are quite well matched, obviously. So we're helping them identify their aspects, do their baseline review, aspects register, that kind of thing, and then just look generally at their waste management arrangements for making improvements in terms of segregation from the plastic side of things, as well as all their other waste streams. So yeah, that would be one example of the type of support we can provide. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adrian. And I know that it's really so like supporting them in their overall ESG and sustainability and the green port agenda, if you wish. So thanks very much for that. Well, okay, everyone, we've come to the end of the session. Again, I'd like to really thank everybody for taking the time to come and join us and learn a little bit about the Responsible Plastic Management Programme. Thanks for tolerating us going a little bit over time as well. And I'd also like to close by saying really very much a thank you to SAIC for hosting the event, and to Benedicta and to Hazel for the great organisation work. And yeah, so hopefully we'll hear from you soon, folks. And thanks very much. And Benedicta, I don't know if you want to say a closing word, but anyway, the floor is yours if you do.
Just to say, to reiterate, I find this really interesting, and thank you so much to everybody who's come along to listen, and also to all of you who have presented the programme to us. I think it sounds fantastic, and I really look forward to seeing some good outcomes for the people engaging with the programme going forward. And as I say, delighted if anybody wants to get in touch with us here at SAIC as well, then please do, sustainableaquaculture.com. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.